Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and I consider it always an honor when we have time to sit down with Troy Miller, who's the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. As you know, I was gone a week before last there at the NRB Convention in Nashville, and it was a huge success. And I have to tell you, if you're in any level of Christian communication, wherever you are, church to broadcast to podcast, whatever, publication, filmmaking, you need to become a member of the NRB, and it's easy to do. Just go to nrb.org and sign up and be a part of an organization that is there not only helping you to succeed, but also defending your right to do what God called you to do. So, Troy, buddy, good to see you, man. When do you sleep?
Hey, Perry. Sleep is it's overrated, Perry. It's overrated. But
okay.
Good to see you again. Even if it's this time from a distance, it was better to see you walking around the halls of NRB 2026.
Well, congratulations to a huge success. 5,700 Christian communicators from around the world. What was your takeaway, Mr. President?
Success, I think, was exact. We had, as you said, almost 5,700 folks around there. From the feedback we've had, it was just a great time. People learned a lot about what's going on in our industry, what's going on in our culture, what's going on around the world. And then there was a lot of great networking and iron sharpening iron. So we're excited that people are back and that they're more motivated than ever for the ministry God's called them to do.
You have mentioned several times in a lot of your speeches there, Troy, that it's an era of change. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, we called it a new era. The new era of Christian communications begins now, and that's kind of threefold. One, there's a lot of change going on in the communications arena. Some of the old guard traditional media that had a lock on the American and world audiences, they don't quite have that anymore. I just saw an article just the other day that Christian Talk and Teach is now the #1 format on radio. So Christian media has really come to a new phase and a new place. We have all this new technology going on, AI, streaming, social media platforms. So there's a lot of change there. But the big thing, Perry, is in this new age, it's really a time for us as Christian communicators, pastors, as you said, podcasters, bloggers, people producing television programs. It's really a time for us to step up and be bold in our faith. We have a world that is desperately in need of and wants to hear the truth of the gospel message.
I want to underscore that a little bit, Troy, because just about every speaker that stepped to the podium had that theme, that it's time to be bold. It's time to proclaim it clearly. What do you think's happening here? What's going on here?
I think that God is calling the church and calling us to, account for our roles. I really think this is leading into, maybe a fourth or fifth, wherever you want to count it, Great Awakening. And I really think it's preceded by the hunger that we see in society because they have really been fed a whole diet of lies over the last several decades. And the good thing, Perry, we're hearing a lot of the younger generation, the Gen Zers, the millennials, the AA's that are now, they're rejecting this mainstream kind of message that's out there. It leaves them in despair and empty, and they want the truth. And I think God's calling us to step up and for the church to shed off the pop culture and get into the culture of God's word.
Very good. The younger generation uses media different than the way you and I grew up with it. How would you explain that?
Yeah, well, they grew up consuming media that was with them basically 24/7 in these phone environments. And they grew up in an on-demand kind of, they could get access to media and what they wanted to access anytime. They didn't have to wait, like when we grew up, we would sit there and watch going, okay, is it 7 o'clock yet? Is my favorite TV show come on yet? And we'd wait for that. They can consume anywhere, anytime on demand. And that's a big change for them. But at the same time, they're rejecting a lot of the content that's out there. So we have a great opportunity as Christian communicators.
What do you think is coming out of this, you've heard from a lot of people. What do you think our challenges are, Troy?
Look, I think our biggest challenge, excuse me, Perry, our biggest challenge is to be relevant to this culture. I think the culture wants us to meet them where they're at. We have to, as Christian communicators, realize we have a very diverse audience, from baby boomers to X-Geners to millennials to Gen Zs to the double A's, and they do things very differently. So we can't just think that the old way we did distribution or communications is going to work for them. So we have to have that kind of multifaceted approach. But at the same time, Perry, we can't compromise the message. Content is really the top of the list here. They want the solid content, no matter what form it comes in.
You had 43 countries represented there. That's a big number. What's the takeaway from that?
Yeah, so we've worked really hard on reaching out to our international communicators. There's a number of them. Radio is still extremely strong around the world. It's kind of the number one way that people get their information. We have the growing streaming and phones out there, but we're working hard to help Christian communicators globally because, look, we talked about this, I think, last time I was on. Christian persecution is up globally. And I think a lot of them are coming here looking for support, looking for prayer, and then also trying to get new techniques, new ways to do things to take back to their home countries.
You had President Trump speak to the convention via video, and he emphasized religious liberty and a continued challenge in this country. How would you gauge it today, Troy?
Yeah, look, I think because of the work that the administration has done, I think we're at a kind of a peak of religious liberty right now from a government standpoint. So looking at what the government has done over its history, especially the last administration and then a few administrations before that, there was a huge weaponization of government against people of faith. I think we've seen that this administration has really reversed that, and that's good. But we have some huge challenges in corporate America. Corporate America still has an overwhelming bias against people of faith. We're still hearing folks, Perry, that are getting their content pulled off of streaming platforms. They're getting banned from social media platforms for taking on certain topics. So we have a lot to do in that arena in order for us to say that we're in a good place as far as freedom of religion is concerned.
Well, that was kind of my next question. Censorship in our industry, it hasn't gone away, and in some ways it's gone up. I don't know. It seems to be more on the broadcast side than anything else. However, across the board, people are being censored. What do we do, Coach?
Yeah, look, first of all, on the broadcast side, we're fighting. We're not going to give up. We recently had meetings, filings at the FCC about where we're at with religious programming and independence and some of the consolidations that are going on that we see as harmful and see kind of leaving us independent and smaller organizations behind. Even though the content, like you said, has become the top genre on radio. So that's one. And then we're launching this year a bigger effort to get into the corporate boardrooms and the C-suites. Perry, one of the things I came out of business, when I came out of the tech industry, I can tell you that if there's only one voice in those boardrooms or one voice into those C-suites, that's the voice they're going to listen to. So we're getting those voices, our voice in there, so they really understand who Christian communicators are, how big of an audience they reach, and what the influence of this group is.
All right, let me take a quick break here. I want to do a little break early because when I come back, I want to kind of squeeze your heart a little bit. You put out a statement today about military deployment efforts confronting Iran, and being a Navy veteran, I know that you have a new veterans program, and I want to get into that. So let me take a quick break here. We'll be right back with Troy Miller. He's the CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. Join this organization. Go to nrb.org. There's a picture of the landing page. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Always an honor when you have time to sit down with Troy Miller. He's the president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters. And you go to nrb.org. And let me say to you that if you're in any level of Christian communication, films, podcasts, radio, TV, wherever, church media, church development, you need to join this organization. It's there for you. They are your advocate, and they are your connecting point. NRB.org. Troy, you put out a statement this morning, saying basically you've issued the following statement regarding the U.S. military diplomatic action involving Iran, which began this past weekend. You're a Navy veteran. I also know that you have also launched, you said during the NRB, a veterans program. I know this is really dear to your heart. Walk us through this.
Yeah, so Barry, we did put out this statement this morning supporting the president's actions. Look, when I was in the Navy in 1987, I was part of Battle Group Sierra, Operation Echo, that did the first escorts of tankers in and out of the Gulf when the Iranians wanted to shut it down again. This regime has been one of the most destructive, evil groups, I think, that may have existed, certainly in our time. They're responsible for thousands of deaths around the globe, and even as most recently, as much as 30,000 deaths of their own people here. So, at some point, governments and a Christian government, God has raised up, has to take action to protect people, and this action is protecting and saving lives. So we pray for all of those that are in that operational theater, from both our own armed services and our allies' armed services. We continue to pray for peace. We know God uses governments to wield the sword, but he uses his church to fight the spiritual battles. And as a church, we need to be in prayer, praying for peace, praying for God's hand, praying for wisdom on the leaders and that. And then, Perry, just a little bit, we launched this veterans program, this initiative to get churches to have veterans outreaches. Veterans in this country are some of the most at danger group. They have the highest suicide rate, highest depression rates, highest divorce rates, highest addiction rates that are out there. And the only place that's really going to help them is a church that can give them a home, purpose, and meaning, and change their lives with the gospel. And look, they're all wired to serve, so the church is a great place for them to be. That's what this initiative is all about.
How did this happen in America, Troy? How did we drop the veterans, if I can put it that way?
Well, it goes back a long way, and I'll tell you, we're very focused on the veterans here, but way back in the Great Deal, and all the way back to Woodrow Wilson, when we let the government step in and take our role, first of all, our role in the church, and then our own civic responsibility for charity, that's when a lot of this dropped, Perry. We think that the government's got it. The government's going to take control. And we know governments are ill-equipped to do these kinds of things. They don't have the compassion. They don't have the training. They don't really have the motivation to do it that we have as Christians. And not only in this veterans area, but Christians need to step up and take a lot of this charity back from the government. And the government should not have its hands in any of it.
Well, I really hope people hear what you're saying here, because this is an amazing opportunity for churches and other Christian organizations to reach out to these veterans. And it's amazing to me how many are living on the street. My mind goes on tilt when I was just at the Gospel Mission and Salvation Army here in our own backyard. How many veterans find their way into those facilities and into those organizations in the middle of the night? And I thought, what in the world's going on that a veteran would be living on a street?
Yeah, it's sad that we have forgotten them. But But there's also we're working in conjunction with the Veterans Administration on this, and they have a lot of tools that are available to veterans that a lot of veterans don't even know about, and they don't know about them because they're already in such a state of despair. And that's where the church comes in, because the church should be the ones reaching out and getting them out of that. And then once you get them out of that despair, we have all kinds of great ministries on our website on this Veterans Initiative, including the VA, that can bring all kinds of tools to bear to help you. But it really starts with us loving them enough to invite them into church and to go out and seek them as Christians.
That's wonderful. I want to bring your attention back to the growth of digital media. I remember when it was a word, now it's actually a force. And you add to that AI. A lot about AI. In fact, there was a lot of talk about AI at the convention, and I think a lot of people are trying to get their handle on it. You're a techie. What do you think about it?
Well, look, it's like every tool that gets developed. There's a lot of people that are going to use it to do a lot of good. AI can really help you in streamlining a lot of production tasks. It can help you with some workflows. It could do some really neat creative things in editing. So there's a lot of good potential with that. It's a wonderful research tool. It can help you find information quickly. But there's also the potential to do a lot of harm with it. And so one of the things that we're working on is not just talking about the tools and the productivity side you can get out of AI, but what are some of the ethical, moral, and even religious issues, doctrinal issues that we have to address with AI and the misuse there. I read recently that of the Fortune 1000 companies across the globe, over half of them have purchased an AI company to develop, so they have their own internal kind of AI tools. And so I think we're going to be moving into a time of what I call corporate AI wars, where one AI is battling another AI for information and minds and consumers. But as the church, I think we have to be very mindful that this tool could lead people down the wrong path or a misleading path pretty quickly.
Yeah, I was just reading an article the other day talking about what you just mentioned. They're calling it, the corporations who are merging or coming together, they're calling it a digital tower. And they're actually creating their own software through AI, and then they turn around and they have their own in-house hackathons. I mean, so the purging of this thing is pretty serious stuff, and we'll just have to see where it's going to go. But anything can be used for good or it can be used for evil.
That's exactly right. But I do encourage Christians to adapt it. I think one of the things that we were a little slow on in the whole digital transition was, we kind of always tend to maybe have a little bit of a cynicalism in it and look at it as an evil thing. But look, the God of the universe, there's no one square inch, right? We know the saying that God doesn't say is mine, and that includes the digital space and the virtual space out there. It's all God's, and we should
Amen.
be the ones populating it for the gospel.
All right, I know your schedule's tight, and I want to respect that. So looking down the road, what's your thinking for the future of Christian media?
Oh, look, I still think the future of Christian media is bright. I think it's the hunger that's out there. We have an audience that wants to hear from us. They're desperate to hear good quality information. They're desperate for the truth. We have a high integrity that we have to hold up to. Remember our study last year, 66% of the American audience sees Christian media as most valuable and trustworthy. And with all of these new things emerging, I think the next generations, the Gen Zers and the AA's, I think they're going to do some fantastic things on their platforms with the tools God's given them.
That's wonderful. Well, Troy, I want to say thank you for your work. For those who don't know, Troy became president and CEO of the National Religious Broadcasters during a very desperate time. He turned the organization completely around, him and his team. And we're out there doing all this great work, and you and your team, I just want to say thank you. By the way, you're so busy that your wife texts me to tell you to bring some Chinese food home for dinner.
Oh. I don't doubt that, Gary. I don't doubt that at all.
Okay. Good to see you, brother. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Barry. Good to see you.
Okay.